Hello and welcome to today's breakout session, Leading in 2020, Wisdom from Our Winners. I'm Mike Neal, President and CEO of the Tulsa Regional Chamber, and I'm honored to facilitate a conversation this morning between two of the Chamber's previous Small Business Person of the Year award winners, Lanny McIntosh and Melinda Stinnett. 2020 has undoubtedly been one of the most challenging years for businesses of all sizes and shapes, especially small businesses. Lanny and Melinda are here to share their experiences as business owners, including the challenges they've faced and how they've led their teams during this very challenging pandemic. Lanny McIntosh founded the McIntosh Group in 1988. And the company's grown into a national architecture and accessibility consulting firm. Lanny has more than 40 years experience in architecture with a broad background in program management and a commitment to sustainability and community revitalization. Lanny was named the Chamber's Small Business Person of the Year in 2015 and went on to be the Small Business Administration's Oklahoma Small Business Person of the Year in 2016. He's joined by Melinda Stinnett. Melinda is the managing director of Stinnett & Associates. She founded the firm in 2001 and has more than 30 years of experience with public companies and internal controls in various industries, including energy, manufacturing, construction, utilities, and retail. Melinda was named the Chamber's Small Business Person of the Year in 2016. You may start to notice a trend here, as Melinda also went on to be named the Oklahoma Small Business Person of the Year by the U.S. Small Business Administration in 2017. Before we get started with our conversation, I'd like to give each of you a couple of moments to share a few thoughts. Tell us a little bit about your business. Tell us a little bit about how your companies have evolved over the years. Melinda, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, we were founded here in Tulsa in 2001, as Mike said. It was started as just a sole practitioner venture. I just wanted a little bit more time with my kids. They were very young at the time, and all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, I had some associates joining me. We've grown very quickly over the last 15 or so years. I've been very blessed. We now have 95 team members spread across 6 cities in 3 different states. And I like to say we help our clients minimize their risk and maximize their performance. And we do that through a number of different ways. Right now, the hot buttons for us in terms of helping them manage that risk relate to data privacy, cybersecurity, fraud and forensics. We also do work in the business continuity, disaster recovery, and then all types of operational efficiency reviews and compliance reviews.
Thank you, Melinda. Lanny.
Thanks, Mike. So our firm was founded in 1998. I came out of a large AE firm here in Tulsa that had offices all over the world, and I reached a point at one point where I just said, you know, I'm in too many meetings. I want to be closer to my clients and have more control of the outcome. So I left in '98 and started my own business, and my very first client was Kinko's, and I spent two and a half years traveling out to Ventura, California, working with Kinko's, and that's how we really got started. And since that time, we've grown our practice in terms of our focus as well, and we've opened up this accessibility practice that has really given us an opportunity to help clients become compliant with the law and help them welcome individuals with disabilities into their businesses. So it's really great.
Lanny, thanks. We're so honored to have both you and Melinda with us today. Will, I've got several questions I want to ask you, and we'll kind of rotate. We'll start with Melinda for the first one, and then we'll start with you for the second one. So really, the first question, we'll ask you both to answer all the questions, but really the first one has to do with this past year. This past year, as we all know, certainly the past 6 months, has just been an unbelievable challenge for all of us. So what's it been like for you as leaders as well as business owners who've had to, provide payroll for all these employees? Melinda?
Sure, Mike. As you said, this has been a year unlike any other. We started off the year in 2020 with a really strong performance. Our first quarter was the best quarter we'd had on record. We were set to have really a fabulous year. We lost my father-in-law the week that the shutdown started. And so my husband and I had to tend to a lot of family needs. And by the time we got back to the business, I would say the world had come undone. And there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stress at the office, just in trying to understand how we needed to be responding as a firm to the mandates being put in place across the different cities where we operated, and then in responding to clients who were also having challenges. And so that month of March, month of April was really incredibly heavy, I guess I would describe it. But I think the team and the leadership at Stinnett did a great job of really coming together. We'd started the process, thankfully, before, just as the COVID news was coming out before the lockdown started. So it was pretty easy for us to transition into a remote work world and continue. We've been making what we call lemonade out of the COVID lemons that were tossed our direction since that point. So,
You know, your situation is really so similar to ours at the Chamber in that we were coming off 2 consecutive weeks of just record announcements, one with American Airlines, another with Whirlpool, and suddenly at the Whirlpool announcement, the governor and the mayor got sidetracked and COVID had suddenly hit the state of Oklahoma. COVID had suddenly hit Tulsa and Northeast Oklahoma, and the whole world changed. Lanny, how about you?
Well, I like to put it in 3 terms. One is it's been confounding. It has been surprising, and it's been gratifying. So on the confounding side has been the lack of consistency and the messaging that we've been getting and the direction it was going. It seemed like every day the circumstance changed. It got more and more dire, and you know, there was a point in time when we were thinking we're going to shut down for 2 weeks and get back to work, right? Now we're talking 2021, 2022. So it's really changed things. So we've really had to get used to that. The second part on the surprising side is that our clients have said, don't slow down, let's keep going. There's work. So we did have a little softening, but we've been able to stay busy the whole time. So that's been a really big surprise. I was really expecting this thing to have a big impact on us. And on the third side, on the gratifying side, is that we haven't missed a beat. One day we were all working at the office, the next day everybody's working from home, and we had to make a few technology changes to help make that work better, but everybody just stayed busy, and we haven't missed any deadlines, and it's just been fantastic.
Well, you know, it's...
well, I wouldn't say fantastic, by the way,
yeah.
but it's just been really gratifying on that
Yeah, I
front.
guess the only thing that's, you know, I guess the consistent thing is that it's just constantly been an unknown.
Yes.
And that we thought we'd be back in a few weeks or a month, and it's still unknown as to when things might return to normal, hopefully one day, and
Yeah.
how long we're working remotely. And I guess, you know, for so many of our small business owners and small business members of the Chamber, and one of the things is I've talked to them a lot, is they're like me. They didn't know what a Zoom call was. They didn't know what Microsoft Teams was. They didn't know about all these technology platforms that we've suddenly been, now that we're great veterans and we deal with every day. So let's talk, probably the key management word that I've heard Melinda talked about the most in the past 6 months or so is pivot, about how essential it is for companies to pivot their strategies. So my question really for both of you really has to do with how have your respective companies pivoted your strategy to ensure that A, you take care of your customers, your clients, and B, that you take care of your employees. Lanny, let's start with you.
Well, first and foremost, when we started seeing this thing accelerating, the very first conversation we were having is how do we keep our people safe? And so we on one day, we gave everybody the option to work from home, and the next day, there were 3 of us working in the office, and everybody else was working from home. So I think the safety of our employees was really, really critical. The second part was that we had to make some technology changes, primarily related to bandwidth. The cool thing about our company is that the majority of our clients are out of town. All of our consultants are out of town. So we already work remotely. It's just that the new reality for us was working at home remotely, but doing the same thing we've been doing over time. So that's been good. The other part is trying to try to create a sense of normalcy as much as possible for everybody, because everything else isn't normal. So once a week, for as long as I can remember, we have a weekly face-to-face all hands get together, and we look at our forecasts, we look at our profitability, we look at all of the key elements of our company, and that meeting used to be face-to-face. Well, that one week it was face-to-face. The next week we were doing it on Zoom, and we've just haven't looked back. It's our new normal, but it is normal. So that's basically where we're at.
Thanks, Lanny. Melinda, let's talk about the new normal at Stinnett and Associates.
Sure, Mike, and very similar to Lanny. Thankfully, we too have been in a position where we are often working remote or across our cities, and so there's already the technology in place. We just adopted Zoom last fall and had rolled out Teams as our collaboration tool. So the pivot wasn't as tricky from an office perspective, but as Lanny mentioned, getting everybody home safely, quickly. We implemented complete flexibility in the work hours because many of our team members have children of some age, or perhaps even parents that they have responsibility for. And so we really laid off of anybody being concerned about what hours they were recording and when they were recording those hours. We were more concerned about making sure that they could get the work done in a way that made sense to them and their family. We offered them or gave them an additional stipend every month to help manage some of the additional costs they might have in increasing bandwidth at home, or whatever other things they might need to help them be productive at home. And we've just continued that as long as we need to have folks working at home. We've continued that stipend. Like Lanny, we tried to replicate some of the things that we do from a culture perspective that are part of our DNA. And so some of that was creating these coffee talks on Friday morning, so like gathering around the water cooler or hanging out in the kitchen as people got their day started. We did storytelling. Tried to remember our families are a big piece of Stinnett, and so we had Tuesday night story reading, and we would invite different team members to read to the children of our families. They would join through Zoom, and then the readers' families would get a gift certificate to Barnes & Noble so they could continue to build their children's libraries at home. We implemented chair yoga and some other exercise routines that were led by different team members and their kids to keep that engagement. But I think the most critical thing we've done, Mike, is increase the communication across and as one firm. And so for a long time, we were having weekly calls. We were answering whatever questions were heavy on people's mind to give them assurance and accessibility to key leadership at the firm. And we've rolled that into what we call Stinnett Minutes. And so every 2 weeks, we're getting together and sharing and celebrating and those kinds of things.
You know, one thing I heard both of you talk about is something that I've heard from so many businesses is the fact that it's just absolutely imperative that you communicate, and that communication to be stepped up 2 and 3 and 4 times the importance and the magnitude maybe than you did before, because so often with people working remotely, you don't do all the drive-bys. I sort of can think of myself as a master at management by walking around, but when you walk around the office and there's nobody there, there's only 2 or 3 people there, it's kind of hard to have that interaction. And so the communication that you both described is really so essential. You know, I think so many small businesses, as I've talked to them and said, you know, it seems like, Mike, every week I kind of feel like I've been blindsided. You know, feel like someone's just hit me up the side of the head with some new major issue, some new major challenge that I never thought I'd ever have to deal with, certainly never really had on my radar screen for the second or third quarter of 2020. So when issues have surfaced that have sort of blindsided either of you, where have you looked? Where have you looked for resources or for assistance? Linda, let you go first.
Sure. Well, my husband, Mike, has been a part of the business really from the beginning, and he feels the family connection that I do with our team members. And so certainly Joel has been a good sounding board for me. My business partners at the office and some other of the leadership team, we formed a business continuity disaster recovery committee, and it's populated really more by some of our junior team members across our different cities who have a specialty in that area. Mm-hmm. And so they have been a critical part of making sure that we're addressing some of those, I'd call them technical challenge, some of the client challenges. We have to travel oftentimes for some of the pieces of the work that we do. And so making sure that they are helping us think through solutions to continue to keep team members safe, be able to get the work done and respond to client needs. But then I also have a great group of mentors. And certainly those mentors, I think, have provided a lot of keen insight and guidance. I've reached out to the chamber. On occasion, you guys have had some great resources, I feel like, for the members, and that's been valuable as well.
Well, we've all had to be so dependent upon one another for advice and counsel and try to learn from one another. So, yeah, hats off to the great job, Melinda, that you and your team have done. Lanny?
Well, one of the things I learned real early on is the guy in the mirror in the morning is not a reliable advisor, and so I was invited pretty early to participate in a business roundtable for business owners. It's kind of a small, maybe 6-8 people at a time, and that really sustained me for a lot of years, and I built some really great relationships with those folks, and it's since kind of disbanded, but I maintain several of those folks as my friends and advisors and mentors, and so whenever I have something I need to talk about, I reach out to them. Also, my CPA has been with me for, since 2000, so for 20 years almost, and so he and I talk a couple of times a week, and it's funny, if you have partners, you can talk to your partners about a lot of stuff, but there's sometimes you just can't talk to your partners about everything. And it's important to be able to talk to them and be open and transparent, but it's also important to be able to get another level of advice. And so that's been really helpful for me. So.
Yeah, and certainly the financial aspects have been so challenging for all of us. And so having a relationship, Melinda, with a good CPA, a good financial advisor who can help hold your hands and counsel you through those things is so critical. Let's talk about as you've gone through this pandemic and faced these challenges, have you had to make any organizational changes, any changes to your structure as a result of the pandemic? Lanny, let's start with you.
We haven't. I think continuity is probably one of the more critical things that we could be focusing on. And now one thing we are working on, and it's been a project we've been after for several years, is we have a kind of a second tier of leadership in our company that we've been working on bringing up into kind of higher level thought about the business and working on the business. And so we have an outside consultant working with them and facilitating frequent, usually weekly conversations with them and among them about their role in the business and how they work together and how they can help the business in the future. And with my primary aim is for an ownership transition piece. So so that's probably the biggest thing on structure.
Great, thanks, Melinda.
Similar to Lanny, I feel like we're kindred spirits, but we have been fortunate, Mike. We are playing this for the long game, so we have not had to make any structural or organizational changes. We've not laid anyone off. We've been able to retain our core team because we know as the business continues to pick up, we need those team members in place and ready to go. So similar to Lanny, we've, I think, been able to take some time this year in really lifting people up and putting them in new leadership positions. And I think, Lanny referred to it a little bit earlier. It's a heavy year for us, but there have been some things that I have found so rewarding, and watching those individuals step into those leadership roles and really do great things for us at Stinnett. We're typically always tending to our clients' process improvements and those kinds of things, and the things we'd like to do better at Stinnett kind of get sat by the wayside. This has allowed us an opportunity to let the team engage and take responsibility for what Stinnett looks like and what Stinnett becomes internally, and they have done a fantastic job, and that's been a lot of fun to watch.
I mentioned a little bit earlier about the fact that at times we all feel as though we've been blindsided. But I want to follow up on that a little deeper and ask you, how have you and your companies dealt with handling the unknown week in and week out? Melinda, let's start with you.
Sure, Mike. Well, as we've mentioned, COVID-19 has certainly thrown many businesses, including mine, into a different world than what we've seen before. But when I reflect on my journey from a Stinnett standpoint, when I started this business almost 20 years ago, I left my full-time, really secure public accounting job at the end of September of 2001. And my husband was flying for United. We had a goal of getting to Colorado. I had a goal of staying home with my kids ultimately and having more time with them. They were very young at the time. And all of a sudden, after 9/11, Joel was furloughed basically 1 month after I left my job. And we talked about it, and he's amazing. And he said, you know what, I think I can lean in harder at the Air Force Reserves and do more there and allow you to continue to do this part-time consulting gig. And I've been very fortunate to do the part-time consulting gig now full-time for, like I said, about 19 years. We, as a business, survived the downturn in 2007. We had an interesting ride. We have a lot of energy clients, and they had a challenge in 2015. And so that made for an interesting year. So I feel like we've weathered many storms. This is just another storm, that we need to be focused on, certainly, but that we will weather and come out on the other side of. In terms of what we're doing kind of day to day, week in, week out, we do make sure we're touching base with our team, certainly with our clients on a regular basis. We're thinking about how we want to go to market and what those strategies look like, and then calling upon mentors and others who may be seeing things from a business perspective that would be important for us to be aware of and be able to adjust to.
Thanks, Melinda. Lanny, how have you guys handled the unknown?
Well, the unknown is what we do as a small business owner. We deal with it every day. Like Melinda, the recession in 2007-8 hit us really hard. We went from 30 people down to about 9, but we turned around in 2015 was our best year ever. And so this is just another storm to weather. Our particular point of view that we talk about a lot is that we just lean into this, and we do everything we can do to protect the enterprise and take care of our people. And the main question to ask is, what's the worst that can happen?
You've both done a fabulous job this morning talking about how you have engaged your employees, the importance of your team, the importance of connectivity with your respective teams. Lanny, you just hit on some of the highlights and benefits of that. But I guess I'd ask the question, especially for our audience today, as to what tips you might have as to what you've done to really engage your employees with each other through virtual technology. What's been some of the best practices that each of your firms have utilized to enable that connectivity with the employees? Lanny, we'll start with you.
Well, again, our weekly meetings that we stay on and these check-ins that we do are really critical. They work. Our firm basically is a collaboration engine. So everybody works with everybody else on a daily basis. Our project managers or our program managers meet on their own once a week to horse trade over resources and talk about what they need and what's going on with the projects they're working on and where they need some help. Any given day, one of our top senior client-facing people might end up just being on a production assignment with his team, with his peers and with his teammates. So we don't have a really high hierarchy. That enables everybody to to really communicate and really collaborate on everything that we have to do. And I think that's the key, is communication, collaboration. And our office has an amazing culture about caring for one another and caring for our clients. We send our clients a birthday card. All of our people, our consultants and our staff, our families, we get a birthday card from our cats every week, every birthday. And so it's about kind of the humanity of it. And I think that's where the key is.
That's great. Melinda?
Yeah, again, I feel like Lanny and I very much kindred spirits on that front. For us, that ramp up in communication really has happened mostly through Zoom. We have some other tools that we use. Yammer is kind of our internal Facebook type page where people can post things that are personal, but Zoom has been, I would say, Mike, a pretty great lifeline for us from a Stinnett standpoint. We've talked about some of the individual things that we've done. The team's done a lot of happy hours together where they are connecting either within their geographic area or across the firm. One of the key things I think that we did back in May, in April every year, we bring everybody to Tulsa, and we have a 5-day come together, build team, leadership development, state of the firm type week. And it's really energizing, and people always look forward to that. And we waited and waited as long as we could before we had to finally acknowledge that there was no way to safely bring people to Tulsa. So our leadership development team pivoted and figured out how we could utilize Zoom and achieve some of the things that we would have experienced in that togetherness in April, virtually over a couple of days. And that was, I think, very powerful for us. And that's, I would say, been kind of our critical communication tool in keeping everybody connected and together.
Great, thank you. Any parting words of wisdom from the two of you for our small business owners as they face uncertainty with schools now returning, kids getting back into classrooms, schools, some people doing virtual schools, some people doing in classroom schools, some doing changing by week. So it changes so much by different school systems, but as owners, small business owners are facing uncertainty looking into the fall, looking into 2021. Any just tips, suggestions, words of wisdom that you could embark upon them?
Sure. We've used this word optimism, and I read an article not very long ago that talked about relentless optimism is what will move the world forward. And so I think even though every once in a while it's fine, you're going to hit a little bit of a low spot, it's going to feel heavy one day, but to try to remain relentlessly optimistic, I think is key, because if you can mentally stay engaged that way, I think it will help you quickly respond to other challenges that your organization may be facing. I think our Lanny's and my business is tied to our people. Our people are what generates the revenue, and I recognize there are other businesses that are situated differently than ours. So I would advise them to make sure they know how to access capital, either through the Small Business Association, their banker, their CPA, and making sure they stay connected with those financial advisors, I think, is really important. Understanding the resources that are available through the chamber, because again, we, from a Stinnett standpoint, have certainly benefited, Mike, from the work that you and your team have been doing in bringing businesses together to share information, exchange ideas, talk about challenges they might be facing, because you guys are not going through this alone. Every business, for the most part, is facing some kind of challenge this year as a result of COVID-19. From addressing the pulls on the family side of the equation, what we've chosen to do at Stinnett, our why statement is care greatly, is to afford, like I said, tremendous flexibility to the team to be able to be parent, be teacher, be a coworker, a collaborator, and however that needs to look for them and their family, and to afford some grace and understanding, knowing that when they wake up in the morning and they think they've got their day lined out, that if they've got a young child at home, that can quickly come undone. And so I just think having some patience and understanding, and then that network that you can lean on to get advice and to help lift your spirits. Like Lanny said, sometimes that may need to be outside of your organization because your organization wants to see you strong and resilient. And so I think having those individuals that Lanny referenced to be able to speak to and help is important as well.
Yeah,
Thanks, Melinda. Lanny?
That was awesome. I think that this brain trust that I talked about is probably one of the most important things that a small business owner can do. Having someone in a similar kind of business, but even having someone in a different kind of business, but with a similar kind of, we're service, basically service type business like mine and Melinda's. And I think if you can build that brain trust, then you can talk about what are you doing about this. I've got an employee, for instance, who came to me, and he and his wife are both architects, and they work for he works for us and she works for a different firm, but they've got two young boys, and they needed help. They couldn't do it, and so they came to us with a suggestion. We said, sure, that's fine, that works. And so I think the idea of being flexible, that's completely important, as well as the ability to be empathetic and to listen to your staff and find out what's really going on with them, because if they can't deal with the issues that are going on in their lives because of this pandemic, then they can't be effective in serving our clients and moving our business forward. So anything we can do to help them be successful will help us be successful. So.
Thank you, Lanny. Great job. I made a couple of notes that I want to just quickly reflect on, hitting some of the highlights that came from both of you. Flexibility, grace, brain trust, the importance of having a strong financial advisor, communications, teamwork, empathy. Melinda, you started with flexibility. Lanny, you ended with empathy. I think all of those things are just so absolutely critical. I want you to all join me in thanking Melinda and Lanny for the extraordinary job that they did today. We're so blessed to have them. They are rock stars. They're amazing. The two awards that they won back in 2015 and 16 are by no means the last two awards that these two are going to be winning. And so we're so honored to have them as great chamber members and great advisors for our small businesses. So thank you so much. Those of you listening today, first of all, thank you for joining our breakout session. We appreciate you being here, appreciate you learning from these rock stars. We hope you will stay tuned for the remainder of today's event. Have a great day.